Hello, happy Advent, all you patrons. Welcome to the pre-show.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. The last pre-show that you're going to get this year.
Oh wow, that actually is true.
Yeah.
Wait, no, it's not true. It's not true. The day after Christmas, right?
Oh, you guys are going to get it 12. So this isn't really the Christmas show.
I mean, well, yeah, because I guess the subsequent show would occur within the 12 days of Christmas.
Right. And then the following will be the New Year's show.
Will be the post-New Year show?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first one of the new year.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, then, fine. This is still just the Advent show, which, incidentally, we're doing this on the fourth Sunday in Advent. And the fun part is we get a full complement of fourth week of Advent because Christmas Eve is until Friday. You know, sometimes you got Christmas Eve at like a bloody Tuesday or Wednesday, and the fourth week gets really not this year. But don't they look fine in their Adventine apparel? You notice that one lady has an Advent wreath around her head? That's very stylish.
Who isn't there a saint that has it like that as well? Isn't that like
Well,
Saint
it's
Lucy or something?
St. Lucia's Day, yeah,
Yeah.
on December 13th. But they generally have, like more candles. This lady has 4 big ones.
It's true.
3 purple, 1 rose. She's very liturgically minded. I like that.
It's very true.
She's got all 4 to show that it's the Sunday. I like that. Thank you, ma'am. We all appreciate this.
All right.
What? What's that? She says that if she wants, she's got the 5th candle for the Christmas Eve that she's going to put on the top of her head, in the center on Christmas Eve. She's just going to stand like that for her family all night till midnight.
Wow.
Yeah, well, see, some people get into the Christmas spirit,
What are you doing? Well, how are you getting into the Christmas spirit, Charles?
Well, on Christmas Eve, I'm going to go get my Christmas tree, and then I'm going to decorate it. And then go to midnight mass. And then on Christmas Day, I don't know what I'm going to be doing for lunch, but Christmas night, we're having a big goose dinner here, all of the lockdown refugees. And then we're going to celebrate the 12 days. We're going to have festive dinners on New Year's Eve and on 12th night, the night of the 5th of January. And of course, liturgy and all that on the Epiphany will be a big deal. So, we'll celebrate the 12 days. And I'll keep some of the Christmas stuff up, not the tree, obviously. That'll go bye-bye on the Epiphany. But we'll keep something up until Candlemas, which I love that feast.
What do you do for Candlemas?
I go to a candle mass. Well, you asked. Even if they're not supposed to be advertised, I'll go anyway. I don't care.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What?
Okay, yeah.
I'm obedient. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what we call a teaser. If you want to know more about what you're being teased about, I'm afraid you'll have to hang out at the real show, because we're not going to spit all our venom out now.
You snake.
Listen.
Snakes spit venom out. That's what snakes do.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, you think they're the only ones? I'm sure the Gila monsters spit venom.
I don't think so. I think Gila monsters are like the Komodo dragons, where they have a bite that's pretty brutal.
It's poisonous.
But I don't think it's poisonous. No, I know for a fact Komodo dragons, they have like this bacteria. Like
the Komodo dragons aren't. The Gila monsters are. They're poisonous.
Oh, they are poisonous. Okay. Interesting.
No, Komodo dragons are just disgusting. That's all. That's why they kill you. Yeah. But it's no, the Gila monster definitely is venomous.
Okay, I always wondered how a Gila monster gets things. It's so slow. It's in the desert. Like, how could it possibly get something? But
well, everything is slow in the desert. I mean, you should see the service at this cafe I know in the Mojave. My gosh. You know about slow. I mean, you think the air conditioner would get the... Oh, forget it.
All right.
Obviously, you don't want to hear about slow, slow. See, nothing gets past old Hawkeye. I pick up on this stuff.
Say
I'm
that
what they
again.
call empathetic because I care. I care about people. I've got empathy.
Okay, very good.
All right, well, we just can't let that float in the air.
We had some technical difficulties there, so we're on different pages, but we duly noted you have empathy. Well done.
I have empathy.
Okay.
All right.
You're not a sociopath.
Well, not entirely. No more than anybody else today.
Oh.
No more than the Holy Father.
Hey, watch your mouth.
Well, I didn't say he was a sociopath. I said I know more of one than he is.
Oh, okay.
See, I didn't accuse him of being a sociopath. Who's accusing the Holy Father of being a sociopath? Do you think he's a sociopath?
No, I don't.
You think he's empathetic?
Selectively.
And everyone else is sociopathic. How about his sympathy? Do you think he has sympathy?
I don't like taking questions on the Holy Father. Who am I? Who am I to judge? Am I right?
Yeah, but that's what he says. You should probably... The problem with quoting him on that is that he does judge.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right.
Just asking. Have you had your coffee today?
No, I haven't.
Have you considered having a nice hot cup of green tea? It could help your attitude.
I think it would help my attitude in the wrong direction.
Oh golly! All right, I'm sure you want me to get on with the questions and not make a longer show than I have to. Is what you're saying, basically. Yes. All right, fine. I don't care. I'll answer questions. That's what we're here for.
Yusef says, is there anyone still alive in the Hawaiian royal bloodline? Do you know how their line of succession worked?
Woof, that's a very good question. The answer is yes, but you've got to specify what you mean by it. Firstly, it's important to remember that each of the large Hawaiian islands had their own royal family. The Big Island, Oahu, Maui, Kauai, Molokai, Lanai, they all had their own kings until King Kamehameha I united the islands and established one Hawaiian monarchy. But there's still the other royal families are around, at least some of them are. So that's one thing. That makes it complex. And the second thing is that the main line, the Hawaiian royal family is quite large. The main line, represented by the Kamehamehas, died out. And so from other cousins, they elected various kings. Lunalilo was one of them. The last two, gosh, I can't remember the last king. His sister, who succeeded him, was Queen Liliuokalani. And her direct line has died out. The nearest set of cousins are called Kawananakoa. And so I very slightly knew Princess Abigail Kawananakoa and her cousin, Prince Edward. His son is the current heir to the throne. But there's another line. They're somewhat connected to the Hawaiian establishment. But there's another line that's much more bound up with the Hawaiian nationalists. So there are still a number of Royal Hawaiian institutions functioning. And really, if ever there was an argument that a state should be able to have a monarchy, it would be Hawaii. I mean, the current prince really should be crowned king and sit in the Iolani Palace in place of the governor. I mean, that just in 1993, on the centennial of the overthrow, the United States Congress apologized for it. Well, what good's an apology if you don't make good what you did? So I must say here and now that I'm very, very much in favor of restoring the Kawanakakoas to the Hawaiian throne as a state of the United States.
Yeah, we did a video on the Hawaii before and what happened back then.
Yeah.
And the concept of Hawaiian independence. And it was so weird because we got so many nasty, angry comments from that I just ended up taking it down, like, because people were even going to the website and commenting. And it was so ironic because you were sympathetic. So
Yeah,
there's this faction of people that are really, really militantly in favor of, I guess, Hawaiian sovereignty.
Yeah, Hawaiian sovereignty, Hawaiian independence. The problem with that is severalfold. One is that Hawaii could not support itself economically. I mean, it's dependent on the mainland in a ton of different ways. And so, I mean, I'm sorry if that annoys people. All I can suggest is that you know, they could make the argument that they were fine being purely self-sufficient. And see, one of the problems you have with Hawaii also is that only a small minority of its population are ethnic Hawaiians, even part Hawaiian. Most Hawaiians today are Asian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Filipino. The Haoles are a minority, and that's the whites, and the native Hawaiians are a minority. So while I'm all in favor of the native Hawaiians retaining or regaining those privileges that were promised but either taken or not delivered upon, the idea of Hawaii as a totally independent country, I don't see how that would work out well for the Hawaiians. You know, for the totality of them.
Yeah.
But as I say, I think it would be a good thing. It might require even an amendment to the Constitution. But I think that Hawaii is a perfect example of a state that ought to have its own monarchical government, albeit within the United States.
Interesting. Okay. Yusuf has another question. He says, how did Muslim countries get monarchies in recent times while the West is losing the ones they have?
Well, the reason is that most of the monarchies that we know today in the Arab world were kind of created, in a sense. That is to say, going from west to east, Morocco was a traditional monarchy. It was a French and Spanish protectorate for a long time, and then got independent in 1956. So that was an organic development. In Tunisia, the Bey of Tunis had been the Turkish viceroy. And then when France occupied the country in the 1880s, he became basically protected by the French, a French client. And then for a year after independence, the country was a monarchy before it was overthrown because the Bey was seen as being too pro-French. Libya had been an Ottoman possession. They had no native monarchy. But in 1945, as a result of the defeat of the Italians in the Second War, the Kingdom of Libya was created under the religious leader of the Senussi sect, who had fought the Italians before. He became the king of Libya. And so it was kind of an artificial construct, and it lasted from 45 until 1969, when everybody was very, very excited that the old king was overthrown and replaced by a dynamic young army officer named Muammar Gaddafi, who was the darling of the Americans.
Of course.
And then Egypt had been under viceroys of the Ottomans, the Khedives, of the family of Muhammad Ali, who took over in 1790 something. And then in 1914, when although they were by that time they were controlled by Britain, but still nominally under the Ottomans. So in 1915, when the Ottoman Empire and Britain went to war in World War I, the Khedive of Egypt broke his ties with the Ottomans and became the king. Again, very pro-Western. And the United States backed his overthrow in 1952 in a coup which eventually brought that great American ally, Gamal Nasser, to the presidency of Egypt. And Nasser, of course, immediately became a Soviet client. Are you beginning to see sort of a pattern?
Yeah, of course.
Here?
Of course.
Then in Iraq, again, the British created the Kingdom of Iraq after World War I, again on Ottoman territory, same with Jordan. And the two countries were put in the hands of two branches of the Hashemite family, who had been the hereditary controllers of Mecca. They were the guys that worked with Lawrence of Arabia. Well, they lost Mecca to the Saudi Arabians, who were expanding. But as a consolation prize, they got Jordan and Iraq, which were both kind of artificial constructs. The kings of Jordan managed to hold on to their throne. The king of Iraq was overthrown in 58 with the approval of the United States. And then, of course, you had Iran and Afghanistan, both of which were pre-existing monarchies, but kind of westernized.
Okay.
And, of course, both overthrown and replaced by, hellhole regimes.
Yeah.
So, but the other Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Brunei, they were Islamic through and through, and they just sort of kept doing whatever they'd done. No question of constitutions and things like that, except on paper. But to answer your question, a lot of what we consider the Muslim monarchies were erected by the West in the wake of the Ottoman overthrow.
Okay. Question from Daniel, who says, Charles, is it possible for America to have a monarchy and still be a republic? So, like, a republic that self-identifies as a monarchy.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, if folks are honest, Elizabeth Warren can be an Indian princess. And the other chick in Congress who suddenly became black, if you can self-identify as whatever you want these days. But no, I mean, there are elements of the American Constitution that could certainly fit into a monarchy. The upper house and things like that. And certainly all of our legal and political foundations on the state and county level are monarchical in origin. So, I mean, you have in the East in particular, you've got various offices, the sheriffs of various counties, who claim direct succession to the senates, to the sheriffs under the old regime. And interestingly enough, our notaries public, this is a little factoid I love. You know what a notary public is.
What, they're like a third party that watches two people sign a contract, right?
Right, and they stamp it.
Yeah.
Well, they're much more important in Louisiana and other places that have the Code Napoleon or another version of the Roman Civil Code. Because notaries were big stuff under Roman law, but they did survive under civil law, under common law. Well, originally, two authorities were the ones who registered and licensed notaries: the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. But as you could guess, because we're dealing with territories from Ireland to Poland and from Norway to Sicily, this was a little unwieldy. So the popes basically licensed out the granting of notary public hoods to the primate, the top bishop of every country. Now, in England, that was the Archbishop of Canterbury. And they retained this power even after the Reformation. They became the Anglican official with that title of Archbishop of Canterbury. To this day, the Archbishop of Canterbury authorizes notaries public in England. If you want to be a notary public in England, you've got to register with the Archbishop of Canterbury.
That's kind of cool, actually.
Well, yes, but then the 13 colonies were settled. Well, obviously, the Archbishop of Canterbury, it was hard to get authorization there. So he delegated his authority, as he did in a lot of other things, to the various colonial governors. But the colonial governors were very busy, of course. So they farmed out the duty of registering notaries public to the secretary of the colony. And it was an official in each colony. And then at independence, that became the Secretary of State. And to this day, in each state of the United States, it is the Secretary of State who registers notaries public.
Wow. How did we get to there?
I just told you.
No, I know, but like from the question had to do with monarchy and republic. So that was
well, I mean, the first step, I guess, would be to admit our monarchical roots.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So
admit that I mean, like in New Jersey, every county has, instead of a board of supervisors, they've got what's called the board of chosen freeholders. That goes back to colonial days. Of course, the nickname is to call them the board of frozen cheese holders, but that's a Jersey joke. Jersey people make a lot of jokes about themselves,
as they should. All right. Question from Vonday Radio, who says, please, could you explain how baptism came to be convertible with citizenship of the Roman Empire? What does this mean for Catholics today?
Well, what it means is that the how was that the Emperor Theodosius the Great made it so when he made Catholicism the state religion of the empire. Edict of Thessalonica. So from that time on, when you were baptized, you became a member of the church and you became a citizen of the empire. What does it mean for us today? Well, it means we're all citizens of the empire.
All right. Yeah, that was incredible when you made that, when we sort of got there originally from a long time ago, maybe episode 50 or around there. But yeah.
Well, what's interesting about it is that there's the greatest authority. Let's see if I can find it quickly. The greatest authority on the Holy Roman Empire was a fellow called Viscount Bryce, James Viscount Bryce, who wrote a book called The Holy Roman Empire, which is to this day the best work on the Holy Roman Empire in English. Still the go-to book. And he made a very, very important note about it, which was echoed by a fellow called Klaus Epstein, writing in the a book called The Genesis of German Conservatism. Remember that by 1806, when Franz II abdicated the imperial throne, he attempted to keep Napoleon basically from taking over the position. he quote unquote absolved the various feudatories of the empire from their allegiance. But, and here's the big but, Bryce makes this note. And one thing, in 1806, when the emperor did this, the King of Great Britain was also the Elector of Hanover. And the electors, of course, elected the emperor. Almost always in the House of Habsburg, but never mind. So this is Bryce. Great Britain had refused in 1806 to recognize the dissolution of the empire. And it may indeed be maintained that in point of law, the empire was never extinguished at all, but lived on as a sort of disembodied spirit. For it is clear that, technically speaking, the abdication of a sovereign destroys only his own rights and does not dissolve the state over which he presides. Perhaps the Elector of Saxony might legally, as imperial vicar during interregnum, have summoned the Electoral College to meet and choose a new emperor. Similarly, Klaus Epstein makes the argument, quote, while there is no question that Francis was personally entitled to abdicate a crown he was no longer willing to wear, he certainly had no constitutional power to dissolve the fabric of imperial obligation per se. The empire, like all sovereign states, was intended to be perpetual, and the emperor had sworn to maintain it to the best of his ability. He broke his coronation oath when he declared it dissolved, and he failed to consult the Stände, the representatives, the estates, assembled at Regensburg about his highly irregular procedure. One can argue, therefore, that the imperial death warrant was technically ultra vires and therefore null and void, and that the empire, quote unquote, legally continued to exist after 1806. Well, the Byzantine Empire went through something similar, being snuffed out by force of arms in 1453, that being the other claimant to the imperial throne. The last relatives of that emperor, sold his rights to Ferdinand and Isabella, and also to the King of France. And then the Russians claimed to be the successors of the Byzantine Empire. And then, in some sense, the Austrians not exactly claimed it, but what happened was that 2 years before he abdicated as Holy Roman Emperor, Franz declared himself Austrian Emperor. So he had an imperial failsafe. When he got rid of the one imperial crown, he could get the other. And both of those thrones lasted until World War I, neither of them being void. And so you could make the argument that the empire still exists in a sort of weird spiritual sense.
All right. Last question for the pre-show, again from Vendée Radio, who says, Dear Charles, please could you discuss how the two realms founded by the exiles of Numenor, Arnor and Gondor, represent the two halves of the Roman Empire? Could you comment on how Elisar reunites them as a reunited kingdom, and how the lesser kingdoms like Rohan, Dale, and even the Shire give him honor while maintaining their subsidiary suzerainty? This seems to be a figure of the kings of Europe giving honor to the Holy Roman Emperor as first in precedent while governing their own affairs.
Well, let's start for the end first. Yes, absolutely. That's precisely the background that is there. And Rohan and the Shire and so forth do continue to run their own affairs while acknowledging the king. Arnor is like the Western Roman Empire in that it broke up and then almost entirely vanished. Gondor is like Byzantium, and Minas Tirith is very much like Constantinople, the last remnant of the great past. But Elisar is rather like, there was one of the great speculations at the time that Charlemagne was crowned emperor in Rome. There was no emperor in Byzantium, just the reigning empress Irene. And there was a lot of speculation about having Irene marry Charlemagne. Well, had that happened, you would have had something vaguely analogous to what happened with in Lord of the Rings, with Elisar reviving both sides and reigning over both.
Why are we using? Isn't that the Elven term for Aragorn?
Yeah, but he took it as his regnal name.
Interesting.
Kind of like Hirohito became Showa. Or Akihito became Kaisei or Heisei or whatever it is.
I see. All right.
Or Gypsy Rose Lee became. Forget it.
Yeah. I think we got it, Charles.
All right.
All right. That's it for the pre-show.
Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen? Oh heavens! Look! The guy's he's got Christmas lights all over his suit. That's tacky, but very festive.
Yes.
And you notice the old Christmas lights. Not these new little things that are clear glass, but the old painted lights that are really bright.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's look. He's covered with them, and he's sitting next to the lady with the Advent wreath on her head. That's very festive, ladies and gentlemen. Very festive. Thank you. But don't go away. Stay where you're seated. Don't go anywhere. Don't move. And don't worry about any of this being advertised. We're not doing advertisements anymore because it's been forbidden from on high.
Absolutely. Stay tuned.
We'll see you momentarily. Ciao, ciao.